Everyone talks about anger like it is the enemy. Control it, suppress it, get rid of it. But the strongest people you will ever meet do not get rid of their anger. They do something far more difficult, far more powerful. They learn what anger actually is, what it is trying to tell them, and what to do with it that doesn't destroy everything they have built. Because here is the truth nobody tells you. Anger is not weakness. What you do with it, that is where strength is decided. This is the story of Daniel, and the moment his anger finally taught him something. Daniel was 37 years old, and he was not an angry man. This is important to understand. He was not someone who shouted, not someone who threw things, not someone who made scenes in public places. By most people's definition, Daniel was calm, measured, controlled, professional. His colleagues respected him. His friends trusted him. His family relied on him. He was, by every visible measure, a man who had his emotions under control. But there was a version of Daniel that only appeared in specific moments. When he felt disrespected, when he felt dismissed, when someone crossed a line he had drawn clearly and crossed it anyway as if the line didn't exist. In those moments, something shifted in Daniel. Not loudly, not visibly, but inside, a door opened. And behind that door was not calm, measured, professional Daniel. Behind that door was something older, something faster, something that did not think before it spoke. He had said things in those moments he could not take back. To his wife, Claire, during an argument about money, words that were technically true but chosen with surgical precision to cause maximum damage. She had forgiven him, but he had seen something change in her eyes afterward. A small withdrawal, a new carefulness, as if she had learned, in that moment, that there was a version of Daniel she needed to be careful around. To his closest friend, Ben, after Ben had made a joke at Daniel's expense in front of a group, Daniel had responded with something so sharp, so precisely aimed at Ben's deepest insecurity, that the table had gone silent. Ben had laughed it off, but they had never quite returned to what they were before. His father, a quiet man who had lived through genuinely difficult things, said something to Daniel once that he had never forgotten. "Daniel, you are one of the strongest people I know, but I have watched you, in moments of anger, use that strength to destroy things that took years to build. In 5 seconds. Strength used wrongly is more dangerous than weakness, because it does more damage." Daniel had nodded, respected the words, and not known what to do with them, until the day everything changed. The day came at work. Daniel had been leading a project for 8 months. Difficult, high stakes. The kind of project that required everything he had, his expertise, his relationships, his reputation. He had given it all. And on the day of the final presentation, the day everything came together, his director, a man named Harlow, stood in front of the executive team and presented the work. Daniel's work, without mentioning Daniel's name. Not once. Not an oversight. Not an accident. A choice. Daniel sat in that room and felt the door open. The old response was right there. Ready. Loaded. Precise. He could say something now, in front of everyone, that would make it impossible for Harlow to pretend the omission was accidental. He could correct the record publicly, immediately, permanently. He had the words. He had the evidence. He had the anger, clean, justified, righteous, and every reason in the world to use it. He said nothing. Not because he was afraid. Not because he had given up. But because, in the 3 seconds between the door opening and the words forming, something happened that had never happened before. He asked himself a question. One question. What do I actually want here? Do I want to be right? Right now? In this room? In this moment? Or do I want what is actually mine? Recognized, properly, permanently, in a way that cannot be undone? The answer was immediate. The second one. And he understood with sudden, complete clarity that the first response would give him the first thing and cost him the second. He sat through the rest of the presentation, calm on the outside, a controlled fire on the inside. When it ended, when people were gathering their things, he walked to Harlow, quietly, without an audience. "Can we speak privately?" he said. Not a request, a statement. Harlow looked at him, read something in his face, and nodded. In the empty conference room, Daniel spoke, not with the sharp, surgical words he kept behind the door, with something more dangerous, clarity. You presented my work today without acknowledging my contribution. I want to understand, was that intentional? Because if it was, I need to know that. And if it wasn't, I need it corrected. Publicly, before the end of the day. No shouting, no accusations, no performance, just the facts, the expectation, the consequence implied, but not stated. Harlow was quiet for a long moment. Then, "It was an oversight," he said. "I'll correct it." He did, that afternoon, in an email to the entire executive team, acknowledging Daniel's contribution in terms that were, if anything, more generous than the truth required. Daniel told Ben about it that evening. Ben listened, then said, "How did you stay calm? I would have said something right there in the room." Daniel thought about it. "I asked myself what I actually wanted," he said. "And I realized the angry response would have felt good for 5 seconds, and cost me everything after that." Ben nodded slowly. "So what is anger for then?" he asked. "If you don't use it?" Daniel looked at him. "You do use it," he said. "You just use it as information, not as a weapon. Anger tells you something important. It tells you a line has been crossed. It tells you something matters. It tells you action is required. But it doesn't tell you what action. That's where most people go wrong. They let the anger choose the action, instead of using the anger to identify the problem and then choosing the action themselves." He thought about fire. Fire is not evil. Fire cooks food. Fire provides warmth. Fire gives light in darkness. But fire without direction, fire without containment, burns everything, including the things you love. Anger is fire. The question is never, how do I put it out? The question is, where do I direct it? What do I build with it? What does it illuminate that I need to see? Strong people don't extinguish their anger. They direct it, with precision, with intention, with the question always present. What do I actually want here? Something changed in Daniel after that day. Not his anger. His anger remained. He still felt it. When lines were crossed, when injustice appeared, when people treated him as if his contributions were invisible. But the relationship between Daniel and his anger changed completely. He stopped treating anger as something to suppress. Suppression, he had learned, was just delay. The anger didn't disappear when he pushed it down. It waited. It accumulated. It grew pressure, like water behind a dam, until the dam broke at the worst possible moment, and the flood destroyed everything downstream. Instead, he started treating anger as a messenger. When it arrived, he acknowledged it. Something important just happened. A line was crossed. Something I value was threatened. I am angry, and that anger is telling me something. Then he asked the question, what do I actually want here? Not what does the anger want? Not what would feel satisfying right now. What do I actually want? For my life, my relationships, my future, in this situation. And then from that clarity, he chose his response. The results were not dramatic, but they were real. Claire noticed first. You're different, she said one evening. When we argue now, you don't go to that place. You used to go to that place. And I would brace myself, waiting for the thing you would say that I couldn't unhear. You don't go there anymore. I still want to sometimes, Daniel said honestly. I know, she said, but you don't. And that is the strongest thing I have ever seen you do. The twist in Daniel's story is not that he became someone who never got angry. He got angry. He still gets angry. The twist is what he discovered about the nature of strength, real strength, that most people spend their lives misunderstanding. Strength is not the absence of anger. Strength is the ability to feel anger, fully, completely, without denial, and still choose what happens next, not the anger choosing. You choosing. Because here is what truly strong people never do when they're angry. They never speak from the peak. The peak of anger, that first, hottest, most electric moment, is the worst possible time to make decisions, to say words, to take actions. They wait. Not forever, not passively, but long enough for the heat to become clarity, for the fire to become direction, for the emotion to become information. They never use anger as a weapon against people they love. Anger aimed at the people closest to you, with the precision that intimacy allows, does damage that outlasts the argument by years, sometimes forever. They never confuse expression with resolution. Saying the angry thing feels like doing something. But it is not resolution. Resolution requires clarity. Clarity requires calm. Calm requires the willingness to wait, even when waiting is the hardest thing. So here is what I want you to remember the next time anger arrives. And it will arrive. It always does. First, feel it fully. Don't suppress it. Don't perform calm you don't feel. Don't pretend it isn't there. It is there. It is real. It is telling you something. Second, ask the question, what do I actually want here? Not what does the anger want? What do I want for my life, my relationships, my future? Third, wait for the peak to pass. Not forever, just long enough for the heat to become light, for the fire to show you what it is illuminating rather than burning. Fourth, choose your response, not from the peak, from the clarity that follows, with precision, with intention, with the full force of who you actually are, not just who you are in your worst moment. Anger is not your enemy. It is your signal. It is the alarm that tells you something important is happening, something that matters, something that requires your attention. But an alarm, no matter how loud, does not tell you what to do. That is your job. And the strongest people, the ones who build things that last, the ones whose relationships survive, the ones who are trusted with important things, are the ones who hear the alarm, feel it completely, and then calmly, deliberately, powerfully, choose what comes next. That is strength, not the absence of fire, the mastery of it. If this story gave you something you needed today, share it with someone who is carrying anger they don't know what to do with. Because somewhere out there is a Daniel, sitting in a meeting room with the door open and the words ready, who just needs to hear, wait, ask the question, choose. This video is for him. This video is for you. Thank you for watching.